Before we get started, I want you to indulge me for a minute. I just need to take a moment and just share some of my heartache for what's happened in our country over the last several days. I grew up in New York, and my most vivid memory, as I often share with my dad, was when I left New York and moved to North Carolina. I said, Dad, I ride cabs all the time. And in the last month, I've been pulled over 14 times, pulled out of the cab, frisked, and then found out nothing was wrong and been put back into the cab and told to go on my way. So as we as a nation continue to try to, I think, come to grips with what's happened across our country, as well as in Dallas, I'd like for you all just to continue to take time and remember that us as Americans need to continue to figure out where that peace is for all of us. So I want to start with a question. The question is, who in your life refused to allow you to fail? Was it your mom, your dad, that teacher, the lady who was down the street? Or was it your friend? Well, for me, growing up in the Bronx, it was my mom. And she articulated this in a really mom kind of way. Most folks, they talk about, well, I want to push you towards success. And I refuse to allow you to fail, but they do it through their actions. Well, my mom did it loudly. And she said it often, and I heard it often, and it just resonates in the back of my mind that I refuse to allow you to fail. Even when I was in middle school and in high school and doing some of the things that inner city kids do that they really shouldn't be doing, which we know is not conducive to any type of success, there was the narrative. And that narrative was, I refuse to allow you to fail, but the narrative then began to switch. And it was, I refuse to lose you to the streets. You will have success. So for me, there's this question of, well, what does it mean when you refuse to allow someone to fail? Is it just the one person? Is it the ecosystem? Really, what is it when you refuse to just say, go on, jump off the cliff? So my youngest son, recently graduated from high school. And he graduated with one of our really, really close friends, Dante. And so they were in Cameron Indoor Stadium. We're Duke fans, so we got really, really excited. And the whole entire graduation class is sitting in Cameron, and I'm there and I'm looking at them, and I'm just in awe. And then all of a sudden, I have this epiphany. The epiphany is, oh, wow, there was actually someone that was in every one of these children of color's lives who said, I refuse to allow you to fail. You're going to have success. I thought some more about what would happen over the course of the year. And I remember the robocalls we would get. We would get them from the school every Sunday. Every Sunday evening, we hear the voice of Mr. Logan, the principal, and what he would be saying after he gave us the rundown of the schedule of the week. He would talk about which child had a scholarship to this college, which child had a scholarship to that college, and which other child just got accepted to another school. And this was sort of, in my mind, really just reinforcing that, oh, wow, he was part of this ecosystem. You see, these kids had determination. They had grit. They had toughness. Regardless to where they came from, what they looked like, because you see, when you looked at them, outside of their caps and gowns, what you actually saw were kids who you really didn't think should be graduating from high school, right? You would look at them and say, I don't think he or she is going to graduate. But they had this determination that they were going to have success. And I think we get really, really excited when we have adults who stand by children and say, I know you have grit. I know you're determined. And now I can help facilitate that hope because I have the same level of grit and determination for you to have success. So the young man that was standing next to my son, his name is Dante. I'm going to tell you a story about Dante. This story, it gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. I just talked to Dante a couple of days ago. And so we played, I coached, and I say we played, right? I coached, they played, competitive AAU basketball. We started at age 9, and we traveled. And we were competing for state championships and competing nationally. So we had played really, really well the year before. and we were looking for a big man as we were preparing for a state championship and then thinking about going on to Florida to play in AAU Nationals. And I was talking to one of our coaches, and I said, you know what, I need a big man. I got to have another big man to be able to compete at this level. And he says, hey, Reese, go on over to the shelter. I got a kid for you. Now, I had to stop, take a deep breath, say, the shelter? He said, go to the shelter. So I went downtown to the shelter. And I get to the shelter, and there are all these men milling around. And the shelter has an adult component, but it also has a family component in the back. And I asked one of the men, I said, well, hey, I'm looking for this kid. His name is Dante. And he says, hang on, I'll be right back. Well, he disappears into the shelter, and he goes, I guess, all the way to the back. I'm standing outside. I'm kind of looking at the men. You know, I've worked in these settings before, and so I'm just sort of taking in all the sights. And lo and behold, way in the back, I see this young man coming towards me, and he's walking, and I'm just totally amazed because in this sea of, like, homeless men, there's this 11-year-old who's just confident as all get out. And he's just walking, and I see his brother kind of behind him. I'm assuming it's his brother. And he walks up to me, and he says, hey, I'm Dante. You looking for me? What's up? And, you know, we clicked right then and there. And so I said, guess what? I want to take you to Charlotte, and I want to take you to Florida, but I need to talk to your mom and kind of tell your mom what's going on. And he hesitates, and he says, okay. So we go into the shelter, and I meet his mom, and immediately I understand why they live in the shelter. She loves her babies, but you know what? There's just life. And life's kind of gotten in the way, and it sort of just is what it is. Let's fast forward a little bit. You see, Dante played with us. We actually won a state championship. We competed really well at AAU Nationals, and then we just continued to play basketball, using sports as this vehicle towards the opportunities of success. And Dante had coaches and parents who just created this ecosystem around him and just supported his grit and became the adults that actually had the same amount of grit and determination for him to have success as well as their own kids to have success. Dante also got really good at navigating systems. And see, this is sort of what we begin to facilitate in children when we talk about this hope piece. The hope piece isn't just that you can do well over here, but it's that you can do well over this side as well. And he got really, really good at it. I remember when he graduated, and we were standing there, and we were taking all the pictures, and I said, hey, where's your mom? And I could see in his face, he was just looking, and everybody else was there with all their parents, and they're taking the pictures, and he's taking pictures, but I could also see he's looking, and he's waiting, and he's like, where are you? Lo and behold, mom shows up, and she gives him the hug, and she's just excited, and I see the change in his whole demeanor because mom is there. Dante had the opportunity, he does now, to play Division I football, and so he's had several scholarship offers. Dante's actually not here today because he's at football camp. And so he chose North Carolina Central University to play football. And so I said, Dante, help me understand. You've been living in Durham your entire life, well, most of your entire life. You kind of claim Virginia, but you're living here in Durham. And so why didn't you just go to another part of the country? You could see the world. He said, Coach, my support system's here. Everybody that loves me, cares for me, is right here in this city. He said, more importantly, I have nieces and I have nephews. They need to be able to touch me, reach out and see my success, because this is the only way that they will know that success can actually happen. In East Durham, we have thousands of Dantes. See, we have some Dantes who were born last night. We have some Dantes who are working with us, and they're seventh graders right now. But we have all these Dantes, little boy Dantes, little girl Dantes, but what they have in common is that they have determination to have success. See, I've never met a kid who says, I want to fail. I've actually never met a parent who says, I want my kid to fail. Our job, I think, in East Durham and with the East Durham Children's Initiative is to help people figure out how to have success. Help parents figure out how they have their kids have success. How do we walk with them from the time they're born until we have them ready for college or career, matching that level of grit, determination, and help facilitating that hope, which allows our kids and our families to reach that goal of the college of their choice. So whether they choose to go to California to go to college, or whether they choose to stay right here in Durham because this is where their support system is, and this is where they have an opportunity to be a role model to someone else, that's our role. These supports are critical. You know, we sat in a room back in 2008 and started asking the question, well, if we're going to have kids have success, well, what should it look like? What should it be? Who should be a part of it? We sat around the table and we challenged folks. We said, we want you to come up with a system. Think of it as a pipeline. We're going to walk with kids along this journey. There's one caveat. Don't think about the money. Don't think about what it's going to cost. See, when you start thinking about the money and you get into the cost, well, then all of a sudden you start saying, oh, we just can't do that. Oh, no, we can't do that either. I don't want you to think about the cost. What I do want you to think about are the possibilities. I want you to think about what is it going to take to create this comprehensive pipeline that can take children who we look at today and say, I don't quite know if you're going to have success, and have those children be the success of tomorrow. We followed data. What the data said was that we had to start at birth. We had to actually go ahead and identify kids who were born literally last night. See, those kids who were born last night, those are my new little EDCI kids, right? I call them the money kids because those kids are going to have all the interventions that their 8-year-old counterparts might have missed some of the early years of. These kids are going to have everything. And see, for them, they're going to have someone who's going to continue to walk with them through the ups, through the downs, developing the same grit that we expect our young folks to have. Let me ask you another question. How many times does a teacher come to your home? Good, bad, or indifferent? And then I know now you're thinking, for those of you who had teachers come to your home because of the bad, you don't want to raise your hand, and that's okay. But I also want you to think about this. If we're going to work with families and we're going to walk with children along this journey, and we're going to match their level of grit, we need to know what we're playing with. What are the cards that these kids are dealt? And then how do we go ahead and lay out the game plan for children to have success? So we have what we call parent advocates. See, they're that link between parent, teacher, and child. We have them in early childhood. We have them in elementary school. We even have a youth advocate in middle school. But what they do is, and it's really simple, their goal is to make sure that your child is ready to learn tomorrow morning, regardless to whether you had heat, hot water, whether the cops were knocking next door, it doesn't matter. Can we have your child ready to learn tomorrow so we can walk along this journey? You know, these next couple of slides, I call them the show me the money slides. Because, you know, I talk to folks all the time. They hear about this concept, this EDCI concept. They see kids as we take them out and we show them kids in camp, we show them kids in schools, and they say, David, does this really work? Or is this really just show and tell? It is this reality. You know, through 4 years, we grab 1,000 kids. Keep about 600 of them active. But what we figured out is that if kids are involved in 3 or more EDCI-related interventions, guess what? Their academic upticks. They're actually doing better. You see, what I didn't tell you was we chose this zone because it had the highest rates of crime, had the highest rates of teen pregnancy, substance abuse, childhood abuse and neglect, had the lowest performing elementary school, middle school, and high school. Guess what? It's no longer the lowest performing elementary school. It's not anything that EDCI does, but this is what this continuum does when you bring together all of these high-quality, evidence-based interventions back from Durham, and you get them thinking along one line which says, we will match determination and grit of the kids and families that we work with. So we create this model. And we create a model that really, in theory, should be scalable and it should be replicatable. We should be able to pick it up and drop it in any other part of Durham that needs it. We should be able to pick it up and drop it in any other part of the triangle or the country, for that matter, that is similar to Durham, with similar-sized challenges, but also with similar-sized resources, which every community has, and create this pipeline as we work to create an ecosystem that holds children and families together really, really, really close, matching their grit, matching their determination, and walking with them along this journey. You know, there's academic success. But what we know is that if kids are sick, they don't get to school. We also know that if kids are hungry, they don't sit down in class. And so as we think about this, this is about creating comprehensive interventions that are going to work with kids. Yes, kids have to be able to perform an end-of-grade test. They have to be able to have at least a year's worth of growth over the course of the school year, if not more. But there are all these other intangibles that make for successful children back within a successful community, and that's the other side of this work. So now, as I leave you, and you're going to go home this evening, you're going to think about all the wonderful TED Talk speakers that you heard. You're going to say, oh my, this was just fabulous. And when do we do it again? When do we get to sit here and listen to all these wonderful folks just talk about all these things, which is just so important to our lives? I want you to stop, and I want you to begin to ask yourself the question, who are you refusing to allow to fail?